I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. Good morning. Next I have is approval of today's agenda, but I believe we want to move consideration approved setting date and time for an additional public hearing of the EMS Essential Service Act of public hearing.
So Lance, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the following changes. Moving the consideration to approve setting the time and date for additional public hearing to following the public hearing. And since we're going to have another public hearing, I will remove the consideration to remove resolution number 2026-26 adopting the final EMS property tax levy ballot measure.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Next is approval of the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of July 15th, 2026.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Next is approval of claims for payment of $722.26.
Lance, I make a motion to approve the claims for payment dated July 22nd, 2026.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next I have is 901 or it's 902. I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing for proposed emergency medical services property tax levy ballot measure for the November 3rd, 2026 general election. We have verification of the postings in the paper. And do we have any emails? I have some emails, but first I'll let you speak.
No, I can provide the emails to Ann to put on for the record.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So before we get into this, there is a sign up sheet. Make sure you sign up for it. But BJ, do you want to talk a little bit first?
Yeah, so I wanted to, make a brief introductory statement going into this morning's public hearing. And as you know, we're going to have another public hearing in an evening later in August. And so we do have some bookends of deadlines. So this would need to be wrapped up by September 3rd to make the November 3rd ballot deadline. So we don't want to move it too far, but we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinion. So one of the things I wanted to re-emphasize is I told our EMS community right from the get-go, I'm not going to stand in the way of ballot measure. But the most important part for me is to get something on the ballot that has a chance of passing. And well, is that $1.50? Is it $1? Is it 21 cents? What's that magic number? I'm really not sure what the magic number is, but there are some pretty good, there's some good statistical data out there that would support what would likely pass, what may not pass. So we need to be very cognizant of that, because if it doesn't pass in November, then it will take the EMS Advisory Council, the Board of Supervisors, quite a bit of time to bring it back. And just because you bring it back, maybe sharpen your pencil, doesn't mean it's going to pass the next time. The best example is AGWS, our school board, brought a bond referendum at $14 and some odd cents to the people a few years ago, and it failed by, I think, 6 votes. They sharpened their pencil, came back with a bond referendum at $12, so decreased the ask, and it failed even worse. So just because you sharpen the pencil doesn't mean it's going to be automatically approved. So society has a strange way of feeling out things and feeling, what's the ask, what's the return on investment. So the ballot referendum also includes a term, a duration. So looking at durations, you can go out many years, but there's also a concern is what if the legislature says instead of the cap being $1.50 right now, what if they up that to $2 or $2.50? If this passes at $1.50 or $1 or 75 cents for 15 years, you're locked in. There are ways to back the truck back into the garage, but it's very difficult. And then you'd have to have another referendum. And actually you have to have a referendum to rescind a referendum that passes. So it's very difficult. So
Prime example is they just changed from 75 to $1.50
right.
this year.
Yep. One of the other referendums that a lot of people remember, and I couldn't find the exact vote total, was the Hanson Family Hospital referendum. How many did that pass by? Was it 4?
I thought it was 3 or 5, somewhere in there.
So that history has a pretty strong track record of seeing where we're going to go. I'm not going to grill anybody here, but I do have some questions that if something doesn't pass, what happens to the ALS service that currently serves Southern Hardin County? So those are some big concerns. And then when it comes to when you want to hold a referendum, statistically, you get your best turnouts at gubernatorial and presidential elections. A lot of the EMS referendums and city referendums that fail during city, school elections or specials. Statistically, it's easier to get people to vote no. It's easy to get people, rally the troops to vote no. So there's a lot of variables and things that can happen that need to be looked at. And again, I worked in EMS for 23 years. I even worked with Corey for a couple of years of that, and I really respect the fact that we need EMS. It is essential, but we have to really do our due diligence and see what is actually attainable. And I'm just going to lay this right out. So on my 6 parcels, I have a $320,885 total taxable assessed value. If the levy was approved at 20 cents per thousand, I would pay an extra $64.18. If it was to pass at 85 cents, I would pay an extra $272.75 of property tax. If it was $1.50, I would pay $481.33 in extra property tax. I think that's a cheap insurance policy. Any of those numbers, I would rather pay to get the best service standards across the board. Now, somebody that has maybe an $8,000 or a $9,000 taxable valuation, if the levy was 20 cents, they'd pay $1.73, and the highest they would pay on a $9,000 approximately taxable valuation would be approximately $13, which is a really good insurance policy. So we have to remember that it's different strokes for different folks, but it's also looking at your return on investment. And one of the biggest questions that's been asked to me is EMS guaranteed? And I think the easiest answer is no, it's not guaranteed, because if we have a mass casualty incident on Highway 20 and Iowa Falls, Eldora, Ackley, Hubbard, Radcliffe all send their ambulances, and I have a medical event at my house, the nearest ambulance may be Marshalltown, it may be Grundy Center. So there's no guarantee, but our EMS providers, they're going to do their darndest to do what they can at the moment. So though that needs to be taken into consideration. I want a well-funded EMS entity, but we have to look at the variables. And I think the last variable that I'm more than willing to concede on personally is the management of the funds. of the three things, the levy amount, the duration, and the management, I can really easily concede on the management of the funds. It's not about if Corey or Brooke or anybody knows how to manage the funds. It's just the oversight, and I can I can move past that. So my goal is to get a dollar amount on the ballot that can pass with a duration that will fund it for long enough that there's some ability to adjust and make alterations according to what the legislature may or may not do. And if they don't do anything, you're locked in for several years, but you also have the ability to come back, show the taxpayers that, hey, we've done a great job, we've been good stewards of your money. Now we're going to ask for an extra 8 cents, 16 cents, 42 cents, whatever it may be. So those are my opening comments. This isn't about not trusting EMS and the advisory council. It's about putting something forward that can actually pass in November. So that's very long-winded, Lance, but that's what I had to say, and I'll yield my time.
Okay. So this is a public hearing. Do we have any speaker or any public hangouts? And did anybody sign in for the comments? Come on up.
I did
And
put out questions for you guys,
just
so.
introduce yourself too.
Yeah. So my name is Michelle Kelly. I'm speaking today both as the city administrator for the city of Eldora and as a resident of Steamboat Rock. I want to begin by thanking the EMS Advisory Council and the Board of Supervisors for the time and effort that has gone into this process. EMS is one of the most important services that we provide, and I recognize that finding a long-term funding solution is not an easy task. I also want to be clear that I do support EMS becoming an essential service, and I support giving the residents of Hardin County the opportunity to vote on dedicated EMS funding. As a resident, I intend to support this measure, as I believe every person in the county deserves timely, dependable emergency medical care. My comments today are not intended to oppose this proposal. Rather, I believe voters deserve a clear understanding of how the system will work before they are asked to vote. The first area that I would appreciate clarification on, and I know you gave a little bit, is the board's decision to propose a different funding model than what the EMS Advisory Council had proposed. The advisory committee proposed $1.50 per 1,000 assessed valuation for 15 years. The Board of Supervisors are coming forward on the ballot with $1 for 5 years. Could the board explain the factors that led to adopting a different proposal? Was there a financial or operational analysis that supports the conclusion that a lower levy for a shorter period would adequately meet the county's long-term EMS needs? If the levy amount and duration change, does the anticipated level of service also change in the county? If not, what was the information that led the board to conclude that the lower amount would still accomplish the advisory council's goals? My second area of concern is implementation. The public notice indicates that levy proceeds collected within each city and township will be distributed back to those jurisdictions. However, several communities in Hardin County do not currently operate an ambulance service and instead rely on neighboring agencies for emergency response. How does the county envision this working? Will each city or township have a designated EMS provider through written service agreements? Will those agreements define the level of service expected, identify the provider responsible for that area, and establish how that provider will be compensated? If a city or township cannot provide EMS, will the funding follow the agency that actually provides the service, or will it remain with the jurisdiction where the tax dollars were collected? I also think it's important to recognize the current EMS landscape in Hardin County. Today, Eldora and Iowa Falls EMS are the county's only advanced life support providers. Both agencies routinely respond outside their city limits to neighboring communities when ALS care or ambulance transports are needed. How does this proposed funding model account for the additional responsibility of providing countywide ALS coverage? Will this funding cover the readiness costs, staffing, equipment, training, and operational expenses associated with responding beyond municipal boundaries? And then who will ultimately be responsible for ensuring continuous 24-hour ALS coverage throughout Hardin County? If one of the existing ALS providers is no longer financially able to provide coverage outside its community, what contingency plan has the county considered to ensure uninterrupted service? And then I believe accountability is just as important. Is there a formula that has been decided on how each entity's allocation will be distributed? Is it based on the community's taxable valuation, population, call volume, service area? Or is it just given out to whatever methodology that the county chooses? And will funding recipients be required to meet specific service and reporting expectations? If an agency is unable to provide the agreed upon level of service, does the county have the authority to redirect funding to another provider that can? And then lastly, what exactly are taxpayers purchasing with this levy? Does this passage measure establish a true countywide EMS system with defined responsibilities, written agreements, accountability, and guaranteed coverage? Or does it primarily provide additional funding to the existing network of independent providers? And what level of service should every resident of the county expect if this measure passes? And what's our long-term plan when the 5-year term expires? Again, I support EMS funding, and I hope that every taxpayer in this county sees the critical need that we are in to ensure that every home can have some type of emergency response. I just want to know beyond, can we get this passed? What's our long-term vision of our community if we only give it 5 years and we're back in this room in 3, trying to get back on the ballot, asking for more? I appreciate all of your guys' work and dedication, our advisory committee and council, and everyone in this community who has been listening, engaging, voicing their opinions, and hopefully as a county, we can finally make EMS essential. Thank you.
Thank you. Want these questions answered or?
Well,
I mean, that,
yeah, there's a lot of them to answer. Yeah, it's okay, Michelle. No, I mean, I think from my perspective, I was able to answer quite a few. Again, the 5 years, my concern is that if the legislature changes and says you can ask for more, then maybe ask at that time. So that would be my concern, and the timing to get it on the correct election cycle would be the 5 years. Again, I could go higher. Again, I'm not going to get in the way of EMS getting this on, but I really want something that's going to pass. And we can have a private conversation. I'm not going to put you on the spot here today about some of my concerns. Let's see, if the levy amount and duration were reduced, do you anticipate the level of service to also change? It could potentially change. I mean, a paramedic costs more per hour than an EMT basic or a first responder, so there could be some changes there. And then the funding formula right now, I believe, Jamie or Corey, correct me, but 70% to ALS, 20% to basic, and 10% to first responders. Was that?
That would be in an area that had all 3 services.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 10% would go to any first responder agency, the 20% would go to any BLS agency, and essentially the balance would go to the ALS.
Right. Yeah. Let's see.
So clarification on that, because the way I'm reading it is that the towns and townships would all be distributed funds. So what happens if that
so
community
he was
doesn't?
given their explanation of what they asked of us.
Okay,
Ours came back with the townships and the cities being able to local control, basically. What they were asking is, they were asking a 15-year referendum with a 70-20-10. The 70-20-10 would be written in stone. It will always be 70-20-10 until this is changed.
so then would the county require each town and township that doesn't provide a service to then go into service agreements with the entities that do provide?
With our system,
Mhm.
yes,
Okay,
they have to spend the money on EMS. It's not, they can't hoard it, they can't say, no, they can't do this, it would have to be spent.
so then it's on the municipalities that provide that level of service to work with their city attorneys to develop those service agreements with those towns and townships.
That's no different than you do with fire. So that kind of answered the one question why the difference is. You were asking about the $1.50 levy. I remember them presenting $1.50 wasn't even in the option when they presented to us, it was 75 cents. And they were just falling short of what they needed. That's where the dollar came into play. So the $1.50 was never asked of us.
Right.
What was your other questions?
I guess my only concern in this comes from, for us in the city of Eldora is one, the financial portion of now going with our city attorney to develop all these service agreements. And then now we have to figure out how we're going to approach those communities and figure out our formulas of cost.
I would probably send it to you this way. Pleasant Township doesn't have any service other than Eldora. Go to the trustee, ask for the money for Eldora because that's who you are providing service to. And then they would just put it in their budget and you would get the money. I don't know that you need this service agreement. I mean, you could, I guess. And then they fulfilled the need. The money was allocated, contracted. Oh yeah, do a contract. Contracted to the city of Eldora. The paperwork's done.
So if you want local control, it just seems like we're causing more work on the next step down for the cities to engage with those versus following the
But
other
their
model.
recommendation would have, the money would have to come to the county. They would have to show what they're spending, then the county would have to report it, be audited and everything else that route. To allocate the money out, we can't just write you a check, we have to allocate it. The other method is we write the check to the township contracts. Paperwork's done. A lot easier.
But
Well, look-
ultimately, everything is done at the county level for you guys distribute everything and that's.
We distribute the dollar amount. Let's use Pleasant Township, roughly $30,000. We distribute $30,000 to Pleasant Township. Pleasant Township contracts with the city of Eldora for $30,000. Paperwork's done. Take care of how you guys spend the money, and you would have to be responsible, no different than you would before. But there's no big paper trail coming back to the county as if we don't have to account for it anymore. We would have to hire staffing possibly to be able to do all this extra added work on our side. By doing it this way, it would just eliminate that. The townships done, motion over.
Townships levy just like the county does. I mean, there's a township levy, the township residents pay, and then the township trustees and township clerk distribute that money to where.
Mhm. No, I
budget.
understand all
So-
that,
So
yeah.
we
It's
get,
not
we're out of
reinventing
that, right? So we're
I
not.
just wanna make sure that
involved in
they understand that it's basically a pass through to then come back to the agency that they
Mhm.
contract with.
Yes,
Okay,
and that's pretty simple to explain that they have to contract, they have to provide services. They can hire, but I doubt they got the money to hire. That's not enough to hire, so they would contract with more than likely whoever is working with them now.
I think the concern is, from the EMS provider side is that the townships, there's really no requirements being placed on the townships of how they quote, provide EMS. So they wouldn't necessarily have to provide ALS coverage. There'd be no requirement for that. If they solely wanted to fund their first responder service with 100% of the proceeds from the levy, there's nothing stopping them from doing that. So that's the concern I think we have is that where it's not spelled out clearly, it could lead to unevenness throughout the county as far as what level of EMS.
It very well,
are provided.
it very well could.
Mhm.
And that goes back to the local control of each township. People can talk to their trustees as well. They can become trustees. But also, the other referendum locked it into where the money has to go. It has to be divided this way. This referendum does give the ability to maneuver. Maybe they do need some extra money for a first responder. Maybe they need 12%. It's not locked in at 10. This gives that ability, but also with the ALS, the LS, the BLS, and the first responders, you guys all work together. You know how you're operating to provide services. I don't think a township's gonna deny you of anything, but it just takes the ability to flex a little bit through here, and as government changes, and it's changing fast anymore. As government's changing, it gives that ability to flex a little bit. The referendum that's proposed to us gives no flexibility at all, and for 15 years my mind is way too long for the way the government's changing. I do agree, 5 years, 7 years, it would have to be, can't go, and you said 5, but we actually changed it to 6. But it has to be a 5 or a 7, so you have that 1 year to get the ability to get back on the. It has to be an odd year, I should say. That ability to vote for it again, to get it back on. Pauline, did you want to come up?
Can I just sit here?
Nah, I gotta get you up, state your name.
Pauline Lloyd. I just have a question, like with Union, we're actually in the Union District. But every time we call an ambulance or need an ambulance, like Eldora comes out because they're more equipped with the situation. So then, since Union doesn't have all the staffing, then how does that money go, or how do we
So
get that money then to Eldora then? How does that work
your
then?
trustees could go with the simple formula that they advised. They could do that would be a 90-10 policy.
80-20.
80-20.
If they do have a BLS in Union.
Yeah.
Okay, so an 80-20.
So they work that out and we don't have to do anything.
Nothing would change then.
Okay,
But I'm in the same boat as you, Pauline, so I wanna show it two different ways, so I'm with you, so if I have something happen to me, Union Ambulance, I would love them to show up and take care of me, but staffing and equipment and time of day can all be an issue. So yes, Eldora Ambulance is on an auto aid, so they're going to come out. The other side of that is, when they come out, that's on the taxpayers' dollars, city of Eldora, because Union Township isn't paying for that service. They're doing it through a 2080. So when they come to your house or my house, thank God for the people of Eldora paying that bill.
yeah, because about all Union does anymore is
Come on,
they can only transport
Well,
basically.
right, yeah. And I'm very gracious for that. And
Yeah.
trust me, I'm with you. It's like, why does Jack have to, foot the bill for them coming to your house or my house? That's why I want this to be passed and change. So there's equity and I want to have some skin in the game, whether it's that, $400 and some a year or the smaller amount. Something's got to be done. So we're on the same page here, but it's just a matter of what are the taxpayers and voters going to approve? So, yeah, it would come down to our township trustees would then say, hey, we're gonna take our allocation of these tax funds and we're going to give 80% to Eldora, so they can come down here, and 20% to maintain the BLS service with Union. So that's the end goal, Pauline. So.
I realize I'm coming in a
No,
little
it's
late
okay,
on
no,
this, but.
Nope, but
You
no, I think that's one of the most common questions is how can Eldora or Iowa Falls continue to operate outside of their city limits where they're collecting a tax on the locals to provide excellent care for you or I or somebody in Alden or Steamboat Rock, you name it. So yeah, that's the big thing we are addressing, Pauline. So
Yeah, cause the
you're on.
last two times I was very grateful for Eldora, cause, the last time they came out, I needed the paddles, so.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Eldora, or I mean Union, doesn't have that, so,
Yeah. So nope. We're in the
guess I
same boat
fight
here,
for
Pauline. So
Eldora there on that.
yep. So, all right. Thank
I
you,
just-
Pauline.
Wanted to clarify that, cause thanks.
Yep, no problem, Pauline.
Any other public comments?
I have a question about the population in Hardin County is between
Okay.
16, 17,000.
Can you come on up? There we go.
I'm Nancy Calloway from
Nancy, can you-
Eldora.
yeah.
I have a loud voice and
Shame on you, school teacher.
I have a question about the fact that we are a rural community. We are, like I said, 17,000 people. 50 years ago, we had between 25 and 30,000. Why are we piddling around with little bitty townships and a little bit bigger cities and towns? Why can't we have an overall supervisor, organization, whatever, for this EMT? I just happened to have the EMT out at the fairgrounds the other day. And perfectly great people who took good care of me. But it seems to me that we're nitpicking an awful lot of stuff. And I know that you do it, you are involved with this every day. But just the mere fact that we're a small group of people in the state of Iowa, we don't amount to much when you get right down to it, as are all the other rural counties. It seems to me that we could somehow or another have a supervising body or group, maybe you, who could take charge of all the stuff that needs to be done. I know EMS has a tremendous amount of bookkeeping and record keeping. It just seems to me that we're doing it in a pickety way rather than seeing a large picture and going on with it that way. And I do want you to know that everybody that I know of is getting a little bit older every day. And we tend to have our physical ailments and require more. I live on a street here in Eldora where it's not an unusual thing to have the ambulance come by every couple, 3 weeks. And so it seems to me that if we make a charge on our property tax, that should cover it at a totally different level rather than charging each little township in our county and making the cities.
The charging of each township versus a whole is the same dollar amount.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But why do we even need to do the paperwork? I mean, why isn't it all in one bunch?
as a county-owned operated service.
Yeah, that would work.
Actually, townships levy and it's split between, I mean, they have a maximum levy they can levy. And it's split fire and ambulance. So how they distribute
is
it,
that?
I'm not even,
I don't know either. I
well,
have no clue.
that's set by the state pretty much. But so the township trustees and township clerk decide how they're gonna split that, how much goes to fire, how much goes to ambulance. So
Seems like
that's out of our.
dizzling around a little bit, but that's me. So it would just, as I said, it would seem that we.
This would
could do
go on
this.
the property taxes.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't mind my property taxes. I like the things that my property taxes do. I don't sometimes care about the way they're distributed. For example, with schools and teachers and things like that, but sometimes I think we nitpick ourselves to pieces over stuff like this, and I may be all wrong. But
No, you're not.
But it just I don't know, troubles me that we're even having this discussion, I guess. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Come
Ron,
on up.
Ron Newberg, live in Eldora. Thanks for the discussion. I understand and agree completely the need to be able to pass something. And in that regard, what I think might be helpful, I think we all have a general idea about what all these services are, but they're basically 3 different levels of service that I'm hearing about. What I think might be helpful is to have some specific examples before the voters, so that we all really know and specific examples, whatever it happened with Nancy, what level of service is that? What would we have in this situation, so that people know when they're voting, okay, I'm not willing to pay that for that service. Okay, then this is your level of service.
Mhm.
But to make that very clear and just with real world examples and maybe real world costs,
Yeah.
that I think people will be more informed voters in that regard.
And I think you'd agree, education going into this referendum will be key.
Right.
And it's going to take people saying, hey, people from my generation may be able to associate with Roy and Johnny from Emergency, and this is what you're gonna get compared to, the next, the 20s and 30-year-olds that, just think that, something on their cell phone is gonna save their life. When really, Jamie needs to innovate somebody and, the New Providence first responders can't necessarily do that. Or Michael Pierce is going to give you a cardiac drug that the Union ambulance can't. So I agree. It's going to be a lot of education and marketing for sure. And what everybody's return on investment is.
Right, for those of you who are really familiar with all these services, it's a no-brainer, but
Mhm.
for the general public, I think specific examples, specific costs, and to know exactly what they're choosing and what they're rejecting
Yeah.
would be important.
And I think one of our best, tools that we have is sitting here in the front row from our local media that could explain with the help of our local providers is, hey, here's what the Union ambulance can do. Here's what the Alden first responders can do. Here's what the Iowa Falls and Eldora ambulance can do.
Right.
So I agree. It's going to come down to education and marketing things to the right way so people see their return on investment.
Right, having it out there probably more than once and in time so that people have time to really consider all the options.
Correct.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
Good point.
Any other public comments? Corey, come on up.
Corey Larson, EMS Director for the City of Iowa Falls and resident of Eldora Township. I actually wasn't going to speak today, but after Nancy came up, I just wanted to respond because I think she asked a really important question that actually helps get at why we're doing what we're doing right now. So I think in a nutshell, she was saying, why can't we just have a countywide ambulance service that takes care of everybody in Hardin County? And I think we could. There are counties that do that. It definitely becomes a very expensive proposition to do that. When you go to a county-wide service, we would be looking at basically all full-time staff because there would be a lot of movement around the county. So for example, if Eldora got a call, we'd have to shift an ambulance from Iowa Falls somewhere, sit in Owasso for a few hours or something like that. So there's logistical things that would probably demand a completely full-time workforce. With a full-time EMS workforce, those costs would become exorbitant quickly. Right now, we're providing EMS here in Hardin County. When you add all of our agencies together, I think that totals somewhere between probably $2 and $2.5 million. Depends upon the year and what expenses are needed in a given year. For that, we currently have a total of 10 ambulances available at any given time in Hardin County. Iowa Falls has 5 ambulances. Radcliffe and Hubbard each have an ambulance. Union has an ambulance, and Eldora has 2 to 3 ambulances, depending on what direction they go. So 10 or 11 ambulances at all times. There are times when we have all of those ambulances in use. It's not uncommon for the city of Iowa Falls to have 3 911 calls, 4 911 calls at the same time, and to have 2 ambulances out on transfers from Hanson Family Hospital. So the utilization is very high on a lot of days, and I know most citizens probably aren't even aware of that. The concern would be with the countywide ambulance service, probably at the most, we would be able to fund 3 ambulances staffed 24/7. So how do you do that? Well, Iowa Falls probably needs at least 2 up there of the 3 because we have the hospital. We're doing transfers, the population base is there. That leaves 1 more ambulance that presumably would be down here in Eldora. It's not enough. People in the far reaches of the county would wait a very long time for an ambulance to get to them. In counties that do make this kind of a system work, most of the time they have other resources around them. In some ways, we're an island for EMS here in Hardin County. We don't have readily available backup like you would, for example, in Dallas County where they have the city of Waukee close by. They have Dallas Center Grimes. They have all these resources they can pull from. We really don't have that. To the north, we have Franklin County, which is more or less a county-wide service. And they have 2 ambulances available. So if they have ambulances out on transfers, it's not uncommon for Iowa Falls to get called to Franklin County to cover those calls. To the west, not much that way. To the south, we have Marshalltown. If you read the newspapers, you know that Marshalltown is experiencing their own strains in their EMS system right now. Might be very challenging to get someone from down that way. As you move a little bit further to the west on the south side, you have Story County Ambulance Service out at Nevada. Same kinds of issues. They're working a lot with Mary Greeley names. Mary Greeley has to come over there, etc. So we don't have the kind of, and to the east, we have Grundy Center. Again, they're trying to fulfill responsibilities to their local hospital and to cover a good portion of that county as well. So we lack some of those things that other counties might have that would make a countywide system a little bit more workable. So we are blessed actually in Hardin County. There are many counties that envy what we currently have here in Hardin County. And a lot of that is thanks to our municipalities who have stepped up for many, many years, provided EMS coverage to their communities. And thankfully, those communities, those taxpayers have been gracious enough to share that with the rural parts of our county. But times are getting more difficult. Budgets are getting tighter, staffing costs more, volunteerism is on the decline. And so services that we were once able to provide very inexpensively, because you would just have a couple of people who would leave their place of business when the pager went off, go jump in the ambulance and take the person to the local hospital. Those days, unfortunately, are gone, or if not gone, dwindling. And so that necessitates adding full-time staff. Full-time staff costs a lot of money. At the same time as costs are going up, reimbursement rates are going down. And those things just don't balance out. So what EMS Essential would do is, while it cannot and will never fund an entire countywide system, it does provide enough of a boost, I think, to most of our municipal services that will allow them to continue to provide the service that they are providing. The last thing any of us who work in municipalities want to do is to deny care to our rural neighbors. You are our friends. You are our family. We want to take care of you. Unfortunately, it could get to the point where it's not that we don't want to, but we can't. And if we can't, I think our cities would say, hey, we're the ones paying the bill for this. We need you available for our people. How do we justify to our local taxpayers that our city-owned ambulance was out somewhere in the county taking care of somebody when somebody had a heart attack in downtown Iowa Falls? Those are just the realities that I think that we're all thinking about, and we're all hoping that EMS Essential will help us to add some stability to what's already here. It will be much cheaper than trying to create anything new down the road. So let's use the infrastructure we already have, find ways to support it equitably throughout the county, and be able to continue to be proud of the EMS that we're able to provide for all of our citizens here in Hardin County.
Isn't it sad that we have a dollar price on human life or the emergency types of things? Very difficult on that.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I agree with Nancy. It's sad that we have to put a dollar amount on, but then I also agree with him. I don't want to wait for an ambulance from Iowa Falls, clear to come to Southern Union, to help us, because by that time, one of us could die or whatever. It's gonna take a long time for an ambulance to come from Iowa Falls to Union to help one of us out. So we need an ambulance service in this part of the county to help people. I mean, it's just essential. We gotta have it.
Ed? Any other comments?
I would like to compliment the Eldora crew who came to help me. They were great. Couldn't have asked for better. I ended up going to the hospital in Ames. And that this, everything was fine, but I knew that because the ambulance crew had told me kind of that it was, you're okay, you know, that. So, you know, we have a very fine group of people who are working for us right here. Some things.
Agreed.
Any other comments? Come on up.
Jolene Teskey, rural Hardin County, so speaking from experience with ambulance services. And I just found out that the rural counties, those of us who live in rural Iowa, have never contributed to providing EMS services for the county. And I feel horribly about that because we have to be a community as a county as opposed to just allowing the towns to pay for that service. So I'm super appreciative that they came to my rescue when my son was 9 months old and had his first seizure. So in listening to all of the conversation, I really think it's down to everyone knows that we need this. I think we are all in agreement on that. It's how much do we need, which I assume the EMS people know that better than the rest of us. I have no idea whether 75 cents, $1, or $1.50 is what is needed. I don't know. It's not my expertise area. None of this is actually. And then how long do we commit to this? Again, I would defer to the EMS experts. I mean, do they need 10, 15 years to really stabilize a system in a county? Or can we go with a 5-year plan that allows for adjustments in 5 years? I don't know. But I think we have more commonalities here than we have differences. And that's what we need to focus on.
Jolene, if I can add something too, there are townships, I don't want to discount what our township trustees do or don't do. Because like in Union Township, the Union Township trustees, when the Union ambulance needed a new monitor, a new cot, there are townships that do step up. So I just want to make sure that those aren't discounted because those little things that the township trustees do contribute to, but it's nowhere near what it should be. So,
Well, and I was referring to the property taxes.
right. But that's the township trustees, some of their levy money does go,
Okay.
not all, I don't know
It's
what the,
split between fire and
right,
ambulance.
and they
So you
can
need to
kind of
talk to
pick.
township
So, yeah,
Okay,
As far
but
as
this
where it goes.
this proposal would
guarantee set dollars.
guarantee specific dollars.
Correct.
Based
Yep.
on
Right.
whatever we own.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, I know I asked my husband about it, who's a farmer in rural Iowa, and he was like, this is a no-brainer. Pay for EMS.
Especially farmers.
Yeah, exactly.
Say.
So if my husband gets caught or my son get caught in a grain bin, I want to know that they're gonna be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So to me, I defer the authority to the EMS experts because I think they're the ones who know what we need.
Thank you, Jolene.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comments? Come on up.
Denny Barnard, Mayor. You know, what has been said, I think is really important, is what everybody, like Jolene is saying. You know, quality of life, most important. You hate to put a dollar amount, Nancy, to it, but at the same time, what's the most important part of what we are? Here we are, we have an aging county, we have an aging state. But you know what? We all have the same common denominator, is that life is pretty important. I don't know how you can ever put a dollar amount to that, but it's real important. Of all the property taxes I pay, I would rather pay for life, saving of anything that we do. So anything that we do, I think one of the things that we're all there with, and what Corey said, and we need to support EMS. We need to let them have the deciding factor that what educates us to what they need. That's key to whatever we do in this county. We all have to be on the same page. And I've said that since I've been the mayor. You've heard what I say. We all have to get to that common denominator that we're not fighting, but we're going forward to do what's necessary in the townships we have. We have to support those people out there. Absolutely, those people out there, that's our family. Like Corey said, that's what we need to do. We all have to agree to this point to what we need to do is support EMS. Of anything that I'm gonna keep saying, that is the most important part of what we've got to have right here in Hardin County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Any other public comments? Holly?
I guess I'd just like to add, you know, when we're thinking about doing donations, I put Eldora EMS on my list for donations. I give to them as a donation anymore, cause I thought after the last time what they all did for me, I thought, and I knew, you know, that they were having problems. So I've added them on my list for donations. So I think if we all think about that, we should put our ambulance service on our donation list. If we give out donations, I think that's a wise thing to do.
Thank you. Public, any others? Well, Larry, I can entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Make motion to close the public hearing.
I will second that.
Been moved and seconded, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. 9:51, public hearing is now closed. So we removed the adopting the final EMS. The next one would be saying time and date for another public hearing.
So Lance, I would propose having another public hearing on EMS as an essential service referendum, August 13th, 2026, at 6 p.m. at the county engineer's office.
I will second it.
Been moved and seconded, any discussion?
So the logic was get it a few weeks before. We have to have a deadline, but the logistical issue of opening the courthouse and securing the courthouse is a little more difficult. So having it at the engineer's office where it's ADA compliant and everything, that evening was the logic between for the location and time.
You see how that
You-
is there.
Yes, Daryl.
When would the board have an action item then on approving the ballot language to be published?
I would hope even that evening or shortly thereafter,
The 13th, is that a
Thursday.
Thursday? If you would, just on a time sensitive, because it has to appear in the paper, and all
Yeah.
the papers before the end of August, to be clear that we make the 60-day pre-general election date. So I'm just kind of making sure that you're aware that we gotta get that
Yeah.
on an action item.
And I did some checking with publications and stuff, so I think, or I believe we're in good shape there, Daryl.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Time is that?
6 p.m.
Motion carried. Next I have is consideration of approved subdivision request for section 22 Grant Township,
Which is 21.
or I'm sorry, 21. Grant Township, Taylor sitting in here.
I'm not.
Yeah. we'll come on up.
I'm
No,
joking.
I want Taylor, or I want Taylor to show up. No, come on up.
This might be a pretty good, but basically, 5 parcels over 160 acres is gonna be split into 9 over the same 160. Each parcel is meeting the requirements of access to public roadways and utilities. Yeah, this got approved by the zoning commission on April 30th.
Lance, I'd make a motion to approve the subdivision request for section 21 in Grant Township as presented.
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next is change of status. I have one for the treasurer's department.
Lance, I'm gonna ask for a brief recess so you can get the HR attorney on the phone. So
So 9:54, I'll entertain a motion to recess.
recess until 10 a.m.
There's
I'll
a second.
second it.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries. Recess till 10. So I got 10 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and reconvene. We have HR on the phone, but first change of status would be treasurer's department.
Okay, I would make a motion to approve the hiring of Shea Bree Phillips, treasurer's clerk at $21.25 an hour, effective August 4th, 2026. With the notation that after 90 days, based on evaluation and work performance, could go up to, but not to exceed $21.75 an hour.
I would second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, I have Board of Supervisors Department, change of status, but before I go there, I'm gonna have Mike give an explanation.
Correct.
So Mike?
Good morning, everybody. I'll try to be as brief. I know you've had a long meeting already. Just so everybody knows, Mike Galloway with Allers. I was asked by the board after they were doing the review of their drainage assistants / executive assistant position to review it, make some recommendations, especially as it relates to salary. I visited with board members. I was made aware of, really some goals that the board wanted to have. And one of those being consistency from where we've been, especially as it relates to drainage over the years. And in the most recent past, and concerns that we've had about how it was managed prior to and taking it over. So one of the things when I do is when I'm tasked with from any client to say, okay, should a position be paid? How should we look at it? I typically do an external comparability analysis, and the board's well aware of that. I've done it for Hardin County before. The difficulty is in this position, there are counties that have started to move to this kind of organizational structure where they have an individual that reports to them that does various functions. But none of the functions necessarily align. It's very dependent on the county and whatever the county's needs are. One of them that I look at is in Cass. That individual does payroll preparation, takes the board minutes, which is similar, but also runs all of the HR programming for the county. So same type of position, executive assistant to the board, but different in the duties that are required. So then we start analyzing the duties, especially a large part of this job being drainage. Drainage also varies across, as the board knows, various counties, where some counties have a drainage court where they don't really even need it because of the way the geographic locations. And other places where drainage is a very big topic, especially up in your guys' area. It's a very intensive, or can be a very intensive, large program to manage. And that's one, because you're kind of working and managing this program, that's one of the recommendations that you will also see. So when I was looking at this, there's no really good external comparability to say Ann's job is in these 4 counties. This is what they do. Versus I can take a lot of jobs like an equipment operator in secondary roads, or a clerk in the treasurer's office assigned to a certain specific position area function, and go, okay, here's what everybody else is paying. That doesn't happen. So I had to dive down a little bit deeper and say, okay, let's look at how the drainage functions, especially in some of these other duties. And obviously, as everybody knows, it's typically something that rests oftentimes at the auditor's office, in which case, oftentimes it's going to be a deputy position that has various functions, but it also includes drainage. So I started to go down that road of saying, okay, A better analysis probably is more of an internal comparability of what the job does, and then if it's in that kind of an idea of a deputy in the elected officials' offices, what are those compensated at? And that's how I came up with my recommendations. So what you will see, and these are the recommendations I made, understanding what the board wants, and I'm recommending the board approve this, that they want consistency. They are concerned about maintaining the current relationship, about also if they had to, if Ann were to leave, where they would get that next person to fill those kind of functions. As I've shared with the board, it's not easy to go out and hire. It's probably nearly impossible to go out and hire somebody fully trained, especially in the drainage area. So I took that all into account. I looked at what the other deputies were paid, did some averages, and came up with, I also made a recommendation to this board, and it's before you, is that because of the uniqueness of this position, that we do a basic employment agreement. I think the duties that Ann is performing, number one, can be classified as FLSA exempt or salary, especially when you're managing the drainage program. Number one. Number two, her terms and conditions or benefits are just like all other non-salaried employees, but we state that. And then setting a salary that can go on into the future. And what I've recommended is setting it as 77% of the auditor salary. It's not a deputy in the auditors. It's not going to be classified as a deputy. I want to be very clear about that. I'm just using that as when I'm trying to do the analysis on wages as to where that would be. And I think that that brings it in just a little, right around 63. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. And so based on everything that I've done, I'm recommending the board that they adopt the basic employment agreement that outlines this. And only gets, since her agreement is tied as a percentage of the auditor, and future increases will only be tied to whether the auditor gets an increase that would trickle on down, and just like any other deputy, except it's not titled as a deputy. It's also important to note that the agreement does not provide any additional job protections. It's still an at-will employee, just like all of our other jobs in the county, unless you're covered by a union contract or you have special protections by statute for veterans or things like that. So with that, I definitely open it up to the board if they have any other questions about my process, procedures, anything like that.
Yes.
I don't have questions for Mike.
I don't either.
If there is another office with the same question, I would hope they'd reach out to you for the same type of analysis. Is that fair to say? Other counties do that as well?
100%. No, but understand, I always loop the board in because oftentimes the board is setting those, remember under 331, 903 and 904, the board sets either through collective bargaining, which is under the purview of the board, or clerks and other help, which has been a very expansive definition under the code. I mean, for the most part, Lance, you guys set the wage rates of the county employees. So I can absolutely do the analysis, but the bigger thing is this is a kind of a group effort because the board needs to be involved and know what's going on because ultimately they have to set those wage rates.
But is it the elected official or the board of supervisors that approves the deputy salaries?
Good question, Renee. So that's the unique twist is once the board authorizes the number and the percentage initially, once a deputy is authorized, then the elected official has the ability in future budget years to set that at whatever percentage up to the statutory maximums for each different office, which is 85% for first deputies down to, I think it's 70. They have then the authority to set that and do it during the budget process.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep, good clarification.
Also in this agreement that we've made, there's a 90-day, if she does decide to leave, a 90-day notice, not a 2-week notice.
100%. One of the things that we talked about is keeping the consistency in the job. And if somebody's going to leave, right, especially in a job where, as the board stressed to me on various occasions, like we've had difficulty recruiting into this position. We need time to make decisions on how we would manage this so that our program, especially as it relates to drainage, is functioning at a high level.
So one of the questions I always have is, counties are gonna start struggling on financial needs, budgeting, everything there. This is a large jump. Part of this jump is due to the, exempt, non-exempt, but it's still a jump. It's still a jump above that dollar amount. It's stronger than I'd like it right now, but your recommendation's your recommendation.
Yeah, Lance, and I know, and as you know, Lance and I have conversations about this. The reality of it is I still see it below probably what I would see as, just for those duties. Because remember, when I looked at the averages, not only internally for the deputies, but I look at deputies around. I mean, elected officials are paid differently depending on sizes of counties and so on and so forth. This came to, when we're talking, I think 63. If you were to hire somebody, if you were to go back out into the market and hire, I think that would be a minimum that you are going to have to pay at 63 to get the type of individual that you want to do the job. So it's one of those things, right? I mean, I have this with a lot of clients that would say just what you're saying to me, Lance, right? Well, this is a pretty big jump. And I oftentimes come back with the question, and I do this with a lot of engineers. I think an engineer comparison is a very, very good comparison. Not because of the job duties, but because the scarcity of trying to recruit and retain. And what I say is, look, do you like your engineer? Are they doing a good job? And if they're asking for this amount, what is the cost associated with if they decide to move on to find a new one? You're going to pay at least what they're proposing right now, because we can
Lost you
pay it. I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Lance?
again
Now
now.
we can.
Sorry. If you do the analysis, I just recommend that when we're looking at that, if you're in a good position, there is substantial costs to recruitment and recruitment of a new position, and the risk of whether it's going to work out. So that's why I was trying to come to a position and a recommendation, which I have, and I'm very comfortable with, where I think this position needs to be paid to avoid all of those issues that I see some of my other clients falling into.
Mike, this is BJ. I think it's important to, make the public aware that you can't go to the United States Naval Academy, to Stanford, to Hawkeye Community College, to DMAC, and get an education to be a drainage clerk, correct?
Yeah, I'm under I have no idea that anybody offers any of those programs.
So once you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities, the retention is going to be much more fiscally responsible than the recruitment. And then on the job training, mentoring, and then the risk in the position is fairly significant when you're managing over 200 drainage districts in Hardin County alone. So that's kind of my justification of retention rather than recruitment.
Anything?
No, I would just agree with everything BJ has said and everything Mike has said.
I do have one other comment, not addressed to Mike, but I know that there's heartburn, heartache amongst other employees of the county. And if it's something that we need to look at going forward and do another wage study, I'm more than happy to look at that. But you have to take those results. If I'm trusting Mike Galloway, who represents dozens of counties and municipalities, as if he says 63 is gospel here, that if he happens to say that somebody making 50 right now should only be making 45, are we going to trust him then? So it goes both ways, and I don't want to discount our current employees, but the market drives and the number of human resources drive these wages, and the continuity of operations is important. So that's one thing.
But if I didn't stress it enough, marketability and the market drives, and more in the last 5 years, I would say, than it ever has been before. Okay. And the number of employees in specified positions, right, or specific positions, we know where we have in county government, and yeah, I represent over 50, or I think it's closer to 60 of the counties now between the group of us. We are looking at areas in a whole bunch of cities, as you know, and there are jobs that are very, very difficult to fill. Now, are all jobs a little harder to fill? Yes. But can I advise my clients? And I talk to my auditors across the state. I talk to my HR people that are involved, and I know where difficult positions are to hire. Paramedics are hard to hire. Police officers are hard to hire. Engineers, engineering techs, IT. We have market-driven conditions that also reflect what we have to compensate positions. And I totally appreciate and understand when people say, well, why is this being done? There is reasons for it, because it is the market that we are in, and we are a market-driven economy. And to a good, I believe in that. But the reality of it is we also have to have that reflected in our HR and hiring and retention practices, to know that if we don't do the things for the jobs that are very difficult to recruit to and retain, then we will be out there having to do those things. And that's not a comfortable position, because I can, if you posted a job that said, we want somebody with X 5 years of drainage clerk experience, if you got one application, you would be absolutely lucky.
Well, and I will say, with Ann, as far as, she had no training really, as far as board secretary nor drainage. She's gone above and beyond for covering us as far as, getting agendas out timely and all of that, and doing the board minutes. But also,
You're getting into performance here.
well, but the drainage isn't something that you can hire somebody and they can come in and pick up in a day or a week even.
Yeah.
Or
I
even
mean,
a month.
Right.
And experience that for being the auditor for so long. That's not
Exactly.
something, and I know when you, in your auditor groups, when I talk to my auditors, that's a real concern, especially, like I said, remember, not all counties have the same needs
Right.
for drainage that you guys do. And it's
Right.
not a big deal in a lot of counties, but for you guys and for
It's huge.
areas up in your area, it is a huge deal.
It is.
And so now you've also taken that market down to a smaller number of people that actually have the skills in that area and the abilities and
Right.
the training.
So she not only works for us, she works for the drainage trustees and clerks of all of our drainage districts. I mean, if they have questions, issues, she's getting all sorts of calls whenever there's drainage assessments. And she's fielding all of that pretty much on her own, minus a few calls that some of us may get.
So in the code, it talks about the drainage clerk, but that's a misnomer of a name when you go
Right.
to counties in your geographic. It is a drainage manager of
Mhm.
the drainage program, is the best way that I could say it.
Right. So I would say in the past, probably drainage employees have probably been underpaid. But Just my opinion.
Well, we had Mike air it out there for everybody. From there, any other questions for Mike? I can entertain a motion.
Yeah. I would- Yep. Okay, I would make a motion to approve the pay increase for the drainage clerk slash executive assistant to the board. And Larson. Effective 7/22/26.
Okay, I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I do appreciate what she does. I mean, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong.
And this does change her from being a non-exempt to an exempt employee, so
That's correct.
yes.
I still struggle with these, not stair stepping to get there, but I also understand that it'd be the same fight whether you get there in 3 years or 1 year. And the positions need to be paid what the positions are worth, and that's what Mike came in with the value.
Mhm.
Any other discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, roll call.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye. Motion carries. Any other business?
we have another one for.
Nope, I already
do
took
that.
care of
We
it.
did that.
Yeah.
Mike, you wanna hang on or
Wow.
you done for the day?
Do you need me?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you.
Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care. Bye.
Other business. Public comments. Adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Carries.